She stood in front of her own children and still would not say the name. That is where we start today, because after everything that came out on Friday, everybody expected Mambokazi to finally break, and instead she looked her own son in the eye and said nothing. If you have been following this Kwababa story from the very beginning, you already know that silence from Mambokazi is never just silence. It is a decision. And today's episode, You Found a Father in Me, is going to show you exactly what that decision cost her. Before we go into today's episode properly, let me quickly remind you where we are, because a lot has happened and I don't want anybody watching this to feel lost. A few days ago, Kwababa did something nobody in that family was ready for. In front of everybody, fam by Kwababa, he opened his mouth and told the whole Mambukazi household that Zwelakhe is not Kwababa biological son. Not a rumor. Not a suspicion whispered in the kitchen. A full announcement, made on purpose, in front of witnesses, timed so that nobody could pretend they didn't hear it. And the moment he said it, the entire foundation of that family cracked, because Zwelakhe has spent his whole life believing he is the firstborn son of a man he worshipped, a man whose legacy he has been trying to protect and grow since the day that man died. So when Kwababa drops that bombshell, he is not just embarrassing Mambukazi. He is taking Zwelakhe's whole identity and pulling it out from under him in front of the people he has to work with, live with, and lead. Now today's episode picks up right there, in the dust of that revelation, and the title alone tells you everything. You found a father in me. Somebody in this family is about to step into the space that Kwabba's name used to occupy, and it is not Kwababa. It is Solomon. If you know the Motalang side of this story, you know Solomon has always been the steady one, the one who does not raise his voice to be heard, the one who shows up quietly and does the actual work of being present while everybody else is busy performing. So when the teaser tells us Solomon steps up as a father figure exactly when it matters most, that hits different, because it is happening in the same breath as Zwelakhe losing the only father figure he ever had. One door closes violently, and this episode shows another one opening quietly, and I don't think that timing is an accident. But let's talk about Mambukazi first, because she is the center of all of this, and today she is cornered in a way we have not seen before. This is a woman who leads the Church Women's Guild, who is looked at as the mother of the nation in that community, who has spent years building a reputation as somebody beyond reproach. And now her own secret is not a secret anymore. Her children know. The extended family knows. The workers, the in-laws, everybody who matters is now looking at her waiting for one thing, the name of Zwelakhe's real father. And according to what we know going into this episode, she still does not give it up. She finds herself caught up in her own gossip and her own mess, which tells me this is not a woman calmly managing a crisis, this is a woman scrambling, trying to control a story that has already left her hands. Whether that is out of shame, out of fear of what the name itself will unleash, or out of some last attempt to protect Zwelakhe from a truth that might hurt him even more than the one already out, we don't know yet. But every episode she refuses to speak, the pressure in that house gets heavier, and eventually somebody in that family is going to force the issue, because you cannot run a business, plan a wedding, and negotiate lobola while a paternity scandal is sitting on the dinner table. Speaking of the business, let's not forget what Kwababa actually wants here, because exposing Zwelakhe was never just about revenge or drama for its own sake. Kwababa was pushed out of that company before, and everything he has done since has been building toward getting back in. My reading of this, and I said this before it even happened, is that Kwababa's real target is not Zwelakhe directly, it is Musa. Musa lives a comfortable, easy lifestyle. He has never had to fight for anything in that business, and he is, if we are honest, in no position to run a company of that size. That is exactly the kind of person Kwababa can manipulate. Puff him up, tell him he deserves to be in Kasana, tell him the family owes him his rightful place now that Zwelakhe's legitimacy is in question, and use him as a puppet to get back into the business himself. And wouldn't you know it, today's episode has Musa rising to claim his place as Inkosana in the Makai's home. That is not a coincidence, that is Kwab's plan finally starting to move. Musa stepping forward right now, at the exact moment the family is at its weakest and most divided, should worry everybody watching the show, because a man who has never carried real responsibility does not suddenly become ready for it just because a title becomes available. He becomes a tool for whoever is smart enough to hand him that title. Now let's go back to Zwelakhe, because I think he is the one carrying the heaviest weight in this episode even if the title is not about him directly. Imagine finding out, in front of your whole family, that the man you called father, the man whose name you have been building a legacy for, is not your biological father. Imagine that happening while you are also trying to hold together a relationship with Bahumi, trying to keep the company steady, trying to be the responsible one everybody has always relied on. That is an enormous amount to carry, and it is the kind of thing that either breaks a person completely or forces them to grow into someone new. From what we know of Zwelakhe's character across this whole story, hard worker, big dreamer, someone who has always tried to build something worth leaving behind, I don't think this destroys him, I think it reshapes what he is fighting for. He came into this story trying to protect Kwab's legacy. Now he may have to figure out what legacy even means to him if the man he thought he was protecting it for is not related to him by blood at all. And this is exactly where Solomon becomes so important today. Whatever pain Zwelakhe is carrying about losing a father figure, Solomon steps directly into that gap. Not by trying to replace Kwab, that is not what a good father figure does, but by simply being present, being steady, being the adult in the room who says the right thing at the right time when everyone else is either scheming or falling apart. If you think about the Motaung family's role in this whole story, they have always represented love and stability even while dealing with their own hidden truths. So it makes sense that in the middle of the Makai's family's chaos, it is a Motaung who ends up being the one who shows Zwelakhe what real fatherhood looks like, not through blood, but through showing up. That is probably the emotional heart of today's episode, and honestly it might be the moment that starts to heal Zwelakhe even while everything else around him is falling apart. Let's not forget Mambukazi in all of this either, because she is described as finding herself in hot water over her own gossipmongering, and if you know Mambukazi, you know she has never been able to keep her mouth shut when she knows something juicy. The problem is, in a story like this one, gossip is never harmless. Every time somebody in this family lets something slip, it changes the balance of power, it gives somebody else ammunition, and it usually comes back to bite the person who spoke first. So when we hear that Mambukazi is now dealing with the consequences of her own talking, that tells me whatever she said, to whoever she said it to, has made its way back around and is now creating a new problem for her specifically. Watch this space, because Mambukazi has been at the center of exposing secrets before, and if she is now the one facing backlash, it might be because the person she gossiped used that information against the very family she thought she was protecting. I also want to bring us back to the bigger picture here, because it is easy to get lost in the emotional beats of who said what to whom, but there is a very real business and inheritance question sitting underneath all of this. Zwelakhe was built up in this story as the firstborn son, the one meant to inherit and lead. If his paternity is now in question, that opens the door for a legitimate conversation, or a manipulated one, about who actually has the right to run the Makai's company going forward. That is exactly the door Kwab has been trying to force open. And with Musa now stepping forward to claim his place as Inkosana, we are watching that door creak open in real time. The tragedy here, if you ask me, is that none of this is actually about who deserves to lead. Zwelakhe has spent years working, sacrificing, and proving himself capable, regardless of who his biological father is. Musa has done none of that work. But in family businesses like this one, legitimacy on paper often matters more than legitimacy earned through effort, and that is the trap this family is walking into. So where does this leave Mambokazi by the end of today's episode? Cornered, exposed, but still holding on to the one piece of information everybody wants from her, the actual name of Zwelakhe's father. I don't think she holds out forever. A secret protected this fiercely, for this long, involving this many people, is not sustainable, especially not now that the family has tasted blood and knows there is more to find. Every episode she refuses to speak just raises the stakes for whenever that name finally comes out, and when it does, it is going to change everything again, possibly even more than the first revelation did. Because think about it, finding out your father is not who you thought he was is one kind of pain. Finding out exactly who your biological father actually is, especially if that person is someone already inside the story, someone the family already knows, already deals with, already has history with, that is a completely different level of devastation. Before I wrap up, I want to say clearly that some of what I have laid out here about where this story is heading is my own reading of the direction based on what has been confirmed and the patterns this show has followed so far, not confirmed footage of scenes that haven't been shown to us. I always try to be upfront with you about that difference, because I would rather give you an honest breakdown than pretend I have information I don't actually have. What I can tell you for certain is this: today's episode is titled "You Found a Father in Me." Mambokazi is dealing with the fallout of her own gossip and still has not revealed who Zwelakhe's real father is. Solomon steps into the role of father figure for Zwelakhe at a moment he desperately needs it, and Musa is making his move to claim his place as Inkosana in the Mackay's home. Those four threads are pulling this family in four different directions at once, and none of them are going to resolve quietly. If you have been watching Kwababa since the beginning, you already know this show does not let secrets sit for long once they start cracking. Kwab wanted chaos, and he got it. The only question now is who ends up in control once the dust settles. Zwelakhe rebuilding himself with people who actually show up for him like Solomon and Bahumi, or Kwab and Musa quietly walking away with the business while everyone else is busy grieving a father who may never have been who they thought he was in the first place. That is my full breakdown of today's episode. Let me know down in the comments who you think Mambukazi is actually protecting by staying silent, because at this point I don't think it is only about protecting herself anymore. Drop your thoughts, like this video if it helped you catch up, and I will see you in the next one when this story moves even further.